Good afternoon. This is Robert Scribbler. It is July 10th, 2018, and for this segment of our climate change and clean energy video blog, I'm going to talk with you about an ongoing, what has now been declared emergency for Florida. And this emergency is the result of toxic algae blooms filling up excuse me, Florida's waterways and near-shore environment. Toxic algae blooms and toxic microorganism blooms. Now, before I go into the details of what's going on in Florida, I'm going to talk with you about how climate change enhances harmful growths of microorganisms in waterways. And I'm just going to read this summary from a paper that was recently published in 2015 at the University of Florida. And the summary states that climate change is expected to result in increased temperatures of near-shore ocean water. And this could lead to the increased growth of harmful microorganisms. These include algae that form noxious or toxic blooms, including red tides, and bacteria and other pathogens. This situation could have negative consequences in regard to human health and also Florida's ocean-related economy. Now, what's been happening across Florida this year, and this has happened actually for a few summers now, is that algae has been growing across Lake Okeechobee and into the inland waterways and rivers. And in addition to that, we also have a very large red tide that has persisted off the Florida west coast for 9 months now. And both of these blooms are creating noxious fumes and basically various harmful toxins, biotoxins, that are making waters unhealthy and affecting the respiratory health of some of the people who are working near the water or on the water, who live on the water. Now, I'm just going to read the intro of this article in the Tampa Bay Times, and I'm just going to ask you to read the rest of it yourself. It's a good article. It's a good summary. The article is written by Craig Pittman, and it opens, Florida is awash in toxic algae right now. Blue-green algae covers 90% of Lake Okeechobee. It's now grown thick in the canals connecting the lake to the St. Lucie River on the east coast, as well as the Caloosahatchee River near Fort Myers on the west coast. Meanwhile, a long-running red tide algae bloom on the state's west coast has been killing sea turtles and manatees in the Boca Grande area, according to river advocates and fishing captains. Fish kills and respiratory complaints have been pouring into State Wildlife Commission from 4 counties. Both the algae blooms wrecking the coastal economy both algae blooms are wrecking the coastal economy in the areas that they're afflicting, and both are fueled by climate change as warmer water temperatures boost the likelihood of blooms. Now, to be clear, climate change increases the likelihood of algae blooms by 2 mechanisms. The primary mechanism is by increasing temperatures of both land and ocean surfaces. Algae blooms thrive in warmer environments, but the other factor is that increased instances of heavy rainfall events flush more nutrients downstream and into the ocean. This provides a food basically for the microorganisms that do bloom. So, and in extreme warming scenarios, there is a potential for very toxic environments to be created, and one such toxic environment included an ocean state that was very low oxygen and included a lot of toxic algae blooms. And then this is thought to have occurred during the Permian, which robbed the ocean of its oxygen content and produced a very toxic ocean and near land environment. And this particular anoxic ocean environment is called a Canfield Ocean, and you can look that up on Wikipedia because it's a worst case kind of very hot climate scenario that could occur if fossil fuel burning continues. Now, we aren't at that state now, but we are at a state where the rate of algae blooms is increasing, and this is driven in large part by climate change, but it's also fueled by various industrial practices that flush nutrients out into rivers and water systems, or that create stagnant water systems. Now, this particular event is now so intense that a state of emergency has been declared in Florida. And I believe that this is a first-in-case instance. It's possible that this has occurred before, but I think the extent to which this is happening now is without corollary, and this is a trend that is due to overall long-term warming primarily. Now, I'm going to look at some satellite shots just to give you an idea of the areas that are affected. This satellite picture is of Lake Okeechobee on July 2nd, and as you can see in the satellite picture, we have a very green cast to Lake Okeechobee. It looks as if there's some kind of green fuzz growing on it, and this is indicative of large algae blooms within the lake. Also, the St. Lucie River over here has been affected, and I'm going to go ahead and just zoom out. And we do have some signature of coloration off the Florida west coast, which may be indicative of the long-running red tide in that region. Now I'm going to go ahead and look at sea surface temperatures and just give you an idea what's going on in general in the Florida environment. Sea surface temperatures have been much warmer than normal surrounding Florida for a long period of time, and in particular with regards to the red tide off the Florida west coast, it is a major enabler. Now, overall, warmer than normal conditions and heavier rainfall are also fueling these toxic algae blooms across Florida. And to be clear, increasing algae blooms are in many ways directly associated with climate change. And as the Earth warms up, we are likely to see more and more instances of toxic algae blooms, both in the near coastal environment, in rivers and in lakes, and running further out into the deep ocean if Earth warming continues. Thank you for joining me, and I will be chatting with you soon.